So good morning, everybody. This is our third Marketer Hub webinar. For those of you who haven't attended one of our webinars or events so far, know not very much about me. Just a quick introduction. Simon Besley, and our company is Newton Print. It's a family print company. We do a lot of creative print, and I started Marketer Hub 3 and a bit years ago because we were seeing so many examples of really creative marketing, and we were talking with so many different marketers from all around every different industry. I was talking with one of my clients, and we decided that we'd set up this Marketer Hub idea where we'd run events for networking and for learning and for sharing information and presenting new ideas and things, and it went really well. We've been doing live events since 2017. And of course, now with the lockdown, I thought, well, what a great opportunity to start up some webinars. So here we are, and today we've got with us AJ. I'll let her do her own introduction, but she is dialing in from windy Denmark. So I will hand over to you. Oh, just a quick note on the sort of layout for today, similar to what we've had before. So we'll have 30 minutes or so, 30 to 40 minutes of the presentation. And then the final 15-20 minutes will be answering Q&As that come in. So you should be able to see a question and answer panel somewhere over on your right on the big marker screen. Chuck any questions and answers at us, or you can use the chat function. And then when it gets to the end, we'll do our best to answer. So AJ, over to you.
Thank you. Okay. So as Simon said, I'm AJ. I'm a marketing director for this company in Copenhagen. So I'm based in Copenhagen, and I put marketing director of myself because there's just me. So I'm on my own. Just to give you a little bit of background about what we do. So we're a European pharmaceutical consultancy. We're based out of Denmark. We've got about 75 staff, about 35 here in Denmark, and then the rest are all actually based in Oxford in the UK. And we offer services, and then we also offer software out to people. And then I landed here basically through lots of contacts. So I was just saying to Simon, I was teaching. I'd gone back into teaching for a bit, having a break from marketing, and then I got asked to do this job, and I thought it sounded really exciting. I'm a team of one, as I've said, and why I came up with the title was because I have no budget and I cover 5 business areas. It's bonkers. It's probably the best way to put it. Fairly crazy, but the nice thing about working on your own is you have relative autonomy. However, having no budget is a bit of a nightmare. So what I'm going to try and focus on today is thinking about, what you're going to do, how you're going to get your house in order. Things are a bit odd at the moment. You're either on fire, a bit like I am, trying to chase my tail, or things have gone a bit quiet, or you need to have probably thinking about what you need to do. So I've kind of chosen these areas that I'm going to focus on. It'll be as much as I can potentially cover and as much as my knowledge goes. But if there's, other things that you want to contact me about, then you can do that at the end, of course. So starting off with strategy. So I was thinking about this, and one of the things I always remember when I first came into marketing was somebody said to me, well, you're part artist because we want you to write all this lovely content, and that's the bit that I really like, doing all the sort of creative visual assets. And then at the same time, we want you to be a data scientist, and we want you to sit down and we want you to provide us with all this analytics and how this is delivering and so on. And I thought, wow, when I've got to do this on my own, I've got no help. And so every year I write a strategy, and I'm sure you all do the same. You have a strategy, you have an approach, you think this is what we're going to try and do, this is how we're going to hit our targets. Well, I don't know about you, but since the advent of our lockdown, which was around March I know exactly what day it was Friday the 13th of March here in Denmark, it's gone mad. And I'm spending a lot of time just doing the tactics. I lost sight of where I was going because everything was happening all at once, particularly in our industry. You can imagine kind of pharmaceuticals. It's a bit crazy. Everyone was going, COVID-19, what are you going to do? What are we doing? Who are we working with? It was crazy. So I would suggest, and I have done this myself, is to just have a quick review of your strategy and give yourself 2 hours, shut off everything, and have a look at your strategy and think about, well, actually, what's really changed? What's happened to your lead generation? And I think for me, it's been quite interesting because if you're a B2B marketer like I am, and you're going out and you're doing events, those events have stopped. We would have had 2 major events in the Q1, one in the US and then one in Germany. Neither of them happened. One went virtual, the other just got cancelled. So that's a major thing for us. We come back with probably, I would say, maybe 30 to 40 really good, what I would call leads that are going to generate a future relationship and so on, and they just didn't have that. So now I need to think about, okay, well, where's that coming from? How am I going to do that? Where are people landing in my funnel? Are they coming in where they used to, which is pretty near the bottom? No, they're flopping into the top. And maybe you could do that too. Maybe you could have a think about, well, where are these people landing in my funnel? I think you also need to look at, actually, where's the pressure building? Because from my perspective, all of a sudden for me, it was much more about everybody was going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Everybody was shouting at me to, we want to deliver this, we want more content, we want this, we want that. But actually, nobody was listening to what I was saying. So, and that's quite hard if you're, a multinational company and you're trying to be heard. But is it return on investment that they're asking you to look at? Is it your budget's gone? What do you do with that? I've got no budget now. Or maybe you had a very limited budget anyway. One of the key areas that I think you should do when you're looking at your strategy is go back and have a look at those analytics. I'm not a huge analytics fan. I know I have to do it. It's more of something I do because I know I should, not because I genuinely want to spend all day looking at Google Analytics and what's coming out of my Google ads and everything else. But go and have a look, see what the content is that they're engaging with now. Has it changed? And I think fundamentally for us, it has. Are your Google ads still working in the same way? Or are you getting weird clicks from people in Cornwall who are buying, flowers? And I'll talk about that a bit later. What metrics are you getting from your email marketing? Are people clicking on the same stuff, or has it shifted dramatically? And I think that's where you look at your engagement. So that's around that review. And then from my perspective, it's about being honest with your management team. Okay, I can't do this. We're not delivering this. What are the realistic expectations for marketing in the short term, the medium term, long term? And then I think, take a review and plan your next steps. So if you haven't looked at your strategy for a while, now might be a really good time to do that. All right, I'm going to talk about social media because I've been on so many fantastic webinars about B2B marketing in the last 2 weeks. I mean, some really good ones. So I've stolen stuff. So I'm shamelessly stealing. But I think the share of voice idea is really important, and you need to have a think about what you're doing with your social media channels. There was a lot of talk about LinkedIn engagement being down. My experience doesn't show that. Now, that's either because I've got the right content or our industry. So I hold my hands up to that. It could just be our industry. Twitter, if you use Twitter, you're getting the content right. Are you actually using it like Twitter needs to be used? And that takes a bit of effort. Instagram, a lot of people use Instagram in B2B for recruitment. Are you recruiting right now? Is that important? Could you put it to one side? I think with YouTube, if you're using YouTube, don't worry about perfection right now. Just get your camera out and give it a go. Nothing is going to be a mistake right now in terms of using YouTube. Let's face it, we're all looking at each other with cats walking across their screens, people running around in their underwear. I don't think you've got to worry if you've just got your camera and you're talking to it. Facebook, hands up. I don't use Facebook, so I'm not going to talk about that. But I am going to focus on LinkedIn and Twitter in particular because they're the main channels for me, and also they're free. All right. So I'm going to talk about LinkedIn, about what you can do to help your company a little bit. So one of the things that I've learned over the years is actually those employee profiles of your company are really, really important. Because when people go on LinkedIn, if they're looking for a business partner, and they might actually search for, let's say they're searching for a graph technology specialist, for instance, might be something relevant for us. Or for Simon, they might be looking for, a print design specialist, something like that. So, if those words aren't in their profiles, nobody's ever going to find them. And actually, your employees, there's an awful lot more of them than there is your one company profile on LinkedIn. So I'm showing you mine. It's not perfect. But hey ho, it is what it is. I think first thing, think about the picture. This is a really good time to say to your employees, do you know what? You're all at home. You've probably got a white wall somewhere. If you can find a lamp, can you replace that picture of you, with your floppy hat on out doing whatever? And can you put a professional picture up? Now, a lot of them will have done it, but I still see a lot of strange pictures, people, classic sort of things like they're not up to date anyway. And that when you actually meet the person face to face, they're, 20 years older. I could confess my hair is not what it looks like there because I haven't been able to go to a hairdresser for 4 months. So there you go. But focus on that picture. The next most important bit is actually this little section here. And this is really important because these words, if somebody searches for these, LinkedIn will find these words. So what I've tried to focus on is, yes, my job title is there. Make sure your job title's there, but what else are you interested in, or what would you like people to come to you for? Now, as a marketer, I'm starting to use Vocablo. You'll see it as you go through. It's a kind of drawing technique. I like brand. I'm interested in SEO and relationship marketing, but obviously that's not what my company do, which is why I have this here. Because the amount of connections I get from people who are using graph technology in our industry, that's what I really want. So these words here, really, really important. So get those right. I can't remember how many characters it is. I think it's about 150, 160 maybe. But you can play with this, and make it personal as well. Just, have a look at that top section. The next thing that people will look at probably, and what they're going to see, is this about section. And this about section is really important. All right, there's plenty of space here for you to really focus on what you do. And you can go back to your employees, maybe just choose a few of them that you think might buy into it, might be interested, and ask them to review this on theirs as well. 2,000 characters you've got here, that's about half a side of A4. And you can really explore what it is that you do, what you like doing, the things that you might want people to talk to you about. But the important section is that little bit there, because when people go on your profile, this is the bit they see. In fact, mine cuts off rather annoyingly just there. But that's the bit that they see. And again, these keywords might be what people are putting in to search for somebody. So, have a think about that, what you want to put in there. Part of it, yes, you could say, well, recruiters are going to come to you. Yes, they do. But throughout my little section, I've also said about some of the other stuff that I do. So have a look at that. Talk to your company about how you could get everybody's profiles to have really, really good content in them, almost as much as you've got on your website. And again, focus on those keywords because they are vital, just like they are on the back end of your website. If you don't know what keywords to put in, what you can do is you can use a little thing called Wordle. This was great when I was teaching. Go onto a recruitment site, look at something like digital marketing, cut them all together, paste them in. You could even do this around your business area. So like Simon could go in and find stuff around, what's really important to people looking for really good quality printing. Go in, put all the job descriptions in, and it will throw up all the keywords that people are looking for. And actually, that's perhaps what you want on your profile. So very, very useful, just sort of little things that you can do. Okay, quick wins on your company page. So you've probably got a company page as well. We certainly have. And thinking about what though you want on there right now. So I'm just going to show you a couple of examples of ours. So this was about 4 days after lockdown in Denmark. It's a month old now. And in fact, this has gone up since I put this in. And this was just a very simple thing. Now, these I think now have had their day on LinkedIn, these pictures, so sorry about that. But what you want to be looking at is this engagement rate. What is going on? And this is really good for us on LinkedIn. People were interested, they were clicking up here and reading what we were saying. And actually it brought people into our website. And this one here, I think this is the one that tells you how long or how many times it's appeared for more than 30 seconds in people's LinkedIn feed. And that's actually really useful to know because that means they haven't scrolled past it. So, how can you avoid that kind of scroll? You want people to engage with your post and to have a read. And the other thing you can do is encourage everybody in your company to like, share, respond. It's really important. So whenever I post something new on LinkedIn on our company page, I send the LinkedIn link out to all of them via email and say, please like, share, comment. And if you can get them all to share it with a comment, you're really winning. It's tough to get them to do it, but hey, it doesn't cost you anything. It costs you time and chasing people, but it works. And then this was a more recent one when I was thinking about stories and education. This was very much a kind of editorial, what technology is like in the life sciences right now. It's a bit about why don't people embrace new technology, within the pharmaceutical industry? Why aren't people doing what they're doing in other industries? Why are we so slow? And actually it did very well again. And again, these have gone up since I put this in here, but very interesting because we were looking at the kind of content on the site and how can I get people to engage. And in fact, a lot of the likes on this one were coming from people outside the company, and that's really good because lots of people had shared it. So that's helpful. All right, so that's a bit about LinkedIn. And then there's Twitter. So Twitter is completely different. When you're thinking about LinkedIn, your LinkedIn is your electronic business card. So, have a think about, well, what have I got on there that I want people to know in terms of who I am? But when you're thinking about Twitter, Twitter's completely different and it needs a conversation. And this is where I think if you are really pushed for time, I think you just have to just post content just so that people know that you're there. Maybe just copy your LinkedIn content over. But if you have got some time or you've got a really enthusiastic free intern, how I'd love one of those, to be doing your Twitter feed, that would be really good because it needs a conversation. So you need to work hard at chatting with people. Now that might be that you're chatting with, somebody at another company who's doing something, or you're talking about a new topic. So obviously in pharmaceuticals at the moment, there's a lot of discussion around how normal clinical trials are carrying on while COVID-19 is happening and how those are being managed and so on. And there's a lot of really good chatter about it on Twitter, but it's just people just chatting about, we've had this, we've had that. How do we do this? How do we do that? And if you work hard at it, you can get some good leads and contacts out of it, but it does take a lot of work. And I think, if you've got the time and the energy to be able to work with TweetDeck or Hootsuite and plan your content, maybe schedule out some tweets, that's really great. And if you can avoid doing what I'm doing, which is just blasting out the same content as LinkedIn, that is really good. But it is hard, and I won't take that away from anyone who just says, actually, do you know what, I'm just going to focus on LinkedIn. So focus where you get the most bang for your buck, as it were, where your energy gets the best reward. And that takes a long time for Twitter. I think it took us 2 years to even have a reasonable Twitter following, and even then it's not that great. One thing you can do to help you, though, if you want to use it in another way, Twitter is really good because you can follow your competitors and see what they're up to and have a look at their marketing content. And I'm a firm believer in, keeping an eye on what your competitors are doing and what they're posting, when they're posting, because, hey, you're in the pool with them. So how are you going to stay in front of them? So one of the things you can do is to use lists on Twitter. So on the left-hand side of Twitter on a desktop, you will see a little thing. It looks like a little document with lines on it, and you can create Twitter lists. And here's my Twitter list. They are all with this lock on them. So they are all private. So that means that no one else knows that they're on my list. The only person who gets to see it is me on my who's looking at the Twitter thing. So I have a competitor list. So I've gone through, I found all my competitors' feeds, and actually it was quite nice because some of them are using Twitter even worse than me, which was really good. And then I have all the big pharma on there because it's nice to see what they're working on. Can we support them? I have the events feed on there. So, all those events that we would normally go to that are now switching over to virtual events. It's good to sort of see their stuff. And then also I watch our customers' feeds just in case, they're starting a new trial, they're starting a new project. Can we work with them? So those lists are really, really useful. And it also means that your competitors don't know that you're watching them because you don't have to follow them for them to be on the list. So that's really helpful. It also makes things more manageable. You're not spending hours scrolling through your long Twitter feed trying to find people. And actually making the list is a couple of hours well spent. In fact, I went through when I was thinking about this and redid those lists. And actually, it does really help just to give you an idea about content as well. And if you're not using Twitter, it's a great way to learn what some of your competitors are doing really well. And you can also find out who they're following. So have a look at who your competitors are following and who they follow. Are they following you? That's always quite interesting. Most of ours are, I would say. So that's just a few things about Twitter. Again, I would say if you're going to focus your energies anywhere in B2B, it would definitely be LinkedIn. Right, so next area of focus. So you've worked your way through your strategy. You've decided that you're not going to bother with LinkedIn and social media, because actually that's not where you go. And we think about brand. And I think this is a really good time to have a think about your brand identity. What I mean by brand identity is that collection of objects that you use, like we have on here, our fonts, our little logo hidden in here, our colors and so on. Maybe the pictures that you use. This is our offices, by the way, just in, when we used to go there. What is your brand identity like? How many colors do you have in your palette? Is it restrictive? Is it open? Are you using it right? Are you putting the right colors into your posts, or your tone of voice? Have you got that right? If you have more than just you posting, is it under control? So one of the things I've used in the past, and this might be sucking eggs to some of you, it might be not to others, but is to look at this brand pyramid. Where are we on the brand pyramid? How much am I conveying? Because the interesting stuff, this stuff at the bottom, is the stuff that should be the bread and butter. What are the incontrovertible facts about your business? Then what are your benefits that you're giving out to your customers, and how are those conveyed through your brand? How do you show that? Thinking about those emotional values, and I'll talk about that with ours in just a second. The personality of your brand, what's it known for? How does it look when people come to your brand, either via your website, or not face to face anymore, but through your LinkedIn posts and so on? And then how much of that can you then convert into attachment and brand loyalty? And when I think about how our brand actually speaks, I always think about this, because this is the kind of front page of our website. I captured a bit where it wasn't full of my the managing director's face, and we are essentially a Nordic company with a British arm, and so it always feels to me like I come to our website and I go, there you go, there's our Scandi noir drama being played out in front of you, but it does say who we are. It says, Nordic. High quality, and it does say expensive, and we're not a cheap brand. People can go and buy the kinds of services that we do very cheaply from elsewhere, but they normally end up coming back to us. And that's one of the things that we try to convey through our choice of what we put on the website, the stories we put out, and so on. So have a think about that. Does your front page of your website reflect who you truly are? And have a think about those colors and the design and so on. I'm sure it's something that you already do, but then is it reflected elsewhere? And this is where you start thinking about that marketing collateral. You're not going out to big events right now, so your collateral is sitting in a cupboard. Perhaps Simon printed it for you. Thank you very much, Simon. I have beautiful collateral, thanks to Simon. But maybe it needs to come out, perhaps it needs a refresh. Have you got a template you can use? Do you really need a designer to redesign the template? Or actually, can you go in and just tart up the content, make it a bit more relevant, bring it up to date, even if it's something simple like changing who the contact person is? And then also there's this thing about, well, I can't afford a designer. I'd like to be able to put, some really nice photos on my website, or within my collateral, my marketing materials. So what can you do? And one of the tools that I use, which is really, really good if you haven't used it, is Canva. And Canva is very simple. I use Photoshop, I use InDesign, I use all those Adobe tools. I was very lucky, I've used them for a long time. But if you're not, they're a nightmare. They don't do things that you want. The layers are confusing. And Simon, I'm sure, will attest that. The other thing is you send your lovely design off to him and he goes, no, that doesn't work. What have you done with those settings? So there are things like that perhaps are really tricky. Canva, however, does some wonderful things. Now, this might not be for print, I hasten to add. I'm sure Simon's about to explode. But with the Canva layouts and so on, you can create some really nice things. They do these templates for infographics. They have all these little things that you can go and pick up on there. They will fit it to whatever size you want. You can create all sorts of things. All this stuff generally is free. It doesn't cost anything. If you want some of the expensive templates, it's about $100 for a year. Now, if you can't afford a designer and you've got no budget, you might be able to afford $100 to be able to create some nice looking, sophisticated graphics that you can put all your branding, all your colors in there. It has, I would say, 90% of fonts are in there, but it does all the layouts. So you don't have to think about what size is the LinkedIn post. It has them in there, and it has some layouts. You just go in and drop your stuff in. So really, really good. You can upload your graphics into there, and the free account, I mean, I would say the majority of people don't even need the sort of premium account. And if you do it as an individual, so it's just you, it's quite cheap. Once you start getting into lots of people using it, then it gets a bit more expensive because obviously you're going into enterprise costs. But if it's just you, why not try it? It's a good thing to go and play with, actually, just to see if it works. So that's a little bit about brand and things you could be doing right now that don't cost anything. Oh my word. SEO. How often as marketers are we hearing SEO, SEO, SEO? Yes, it's hugely important. But to have your website audited, if you want to do that, costs a lot of money. If you've got an agency doing it for you, fantastic. For me, I inherited a website, and that was really hard because we've now moved on to WordPress, which I find really useful. But if you're not on WordPress and you're not, really good at HTML, I'm not a programmer, it can be very difficult. But I think, have a look at your SEO. Could you look at page by page by page and just go in and kind of tweak it a little bit and think about what's in that back end of that website? Where are those keywords? What are they? So let me just talk a little bit about keywording and the kind of dark art of SEO. One of the things I have on my website is Yoast, which is it's a free plugin, or you can have the premium version of the plugin. If you can afford it, it's $80 for a year for the premium plugin. It's not hugely expensive. And it's really, really useful because, and I've got metadata here, and everybody always says, you don't need metadata anymore. Actually, yeah, you kind of do. So this is what Yoast looks like at the bottom of a post in LinkedIn. It has your focus key phrase here. You can look at what it then looks like on mobile, and this is that metadata. So somebody's on a mobile and they're searching for your company, this is what it will look like. This lovely green smiley face means I've got it all right. The red face means it's unreadable, but that's because we're in science and Yoast doesn't like science. This is the desktop result, same words. This is how it would look on the desktop. It's so useful. And it limits the number of words so that you know that when that gets posted on Google, that you haven't got that kind of overhanging, it kept going and you can't really see what it says. So it's really good to help you format. It also helps you improve those results. So, you have a look at these things. These are the things I could have done better. Actually, the previously used key phrase, gone because I took it out of the old post. So that's not there. And then outbound links, internal links, key phrase, all those things that we spend hours thinking, have I done this? Have I done that? Have I got enough of this? Have I got enough of that? Yoast will really help you with. Now, I can't remember what you get on the free version, but you get quite a lot on the free version. I think it doesn't have these eye things where you can go and say, okay, well, where is the key phrase? And click on it, it'll take you. So there are little things it doesn't have. But if you're using WordPress, I would say Yoast is a good plugin to stick on your site. It's not a heavy plugin, it doesn't slow the site down. Something else that tells you, okay, use these internal link, and you use any of these. Actually, but thank you for suggesting it. And then the other thing it does is the prominent word analysis is funny because obviously dining room table, I was that on there, so I was working from home. So a couple of names there. Yes.
Sorry, I'm just going to pause you there. Seems like the audio is going a bit funny.
Oh, can you hear me?
Can sort of hear you. It sounds like you're talking down a pipe through a harmonica.
Oh.
Yeah, I've just put a question on the chat, and yeah, it seems like everybody else has as well. So I guess I don't know if you've had any.
No, I'm not notification with that. No notification. It's normally pretty good here.
Sort of echoing as well. I don't know if you can.
Let me just check. I don't know if I can look at the sound.
Someone on the chat's recommending taking your headset out and plugging it back in. See you again.
Hold on. Can you hear me now?
That's better. That's done it.
Oh, okay.
Thank
That's
you.
weird.
Thanks to James Tudhope.
I don't even know if it's now coming out of my headphones.
Take it out and plug it back in again.
All right. Yep. The good old tweak. Right. Let me just do one.
Thank you.
Yeah. Some of this, some of the stuff that you get from Yoast is very useful, and some of it isn't. If there's a problem, I can always re-record this for Simon. Okay. So that's a bit about Yoast. And then think about those keywords. I think keywording is, again, part of that kind of dark art. It's hard work and it takes a lot of time. And sometimes I know if you're like me and you're doing everything, you're doing events, you're doing SEO, you're doing branding, but what do you focus on? You can use Google Keyword Planner. Everybody uses that. It's okay. It's not as useful as it used to be. It just gives you volume. It doesn't really tell you what you need to know. So I use a couple of other little devices. Keyword Sheeter, which is very useful. And what you do is you type in your search term and then you say sheet keywords, and it starts telling you all the things that people have searched for around those keywords. And that's really useful. You have these negative filters, so you can filter things out, like I don't want anything to do with food, and then you can have positive filters and so on. And it's free. So, hey, why not use it? The other one that's great is this thing called Keyword Surfer. It's really, really good. And you can just add it as a little Chrome extension. And it looks like this. So if I type in regulatory affairs consultants, it tells me that in the UK, that's quite a reasonably valued thing to be searching for. It's got a good monetary value. So perhaps I don't want to be using that as a keyword for Google Ads, but I might want to use it for people looking for me on my site. And it also suggests other things you could use. So, and again, this is completely free. It's completely free, and you can change the region, which for me, and if you're working with companies that work outside of other regions, is really, really important, because you could look at the US, for instance, or you could look at, I look at Denmark, or you could look in Europe or wherever. So very, very, very useful little Chrome extension. Again, doesn't mess up Chrome. I know that some of those extensions are very heavy and suddenly you find it's not working. And then finally, just thinking about content. Content is really hard. What is realistic? What can you realistically produce in a month when you're working from home and you can't sit on top of your, I don't know, managing director or one of your partners or maybe one of your technical folks and get them to write you an article? Now, they might be at home not doing anything, so that'd be great. Get them to write. If not, it can be hard. So we've managed to kind of stick to almost one a week. It's been kind of hard, but actually people have been quite responsive when I've been saying, actually, this is the time when you could get out some really good educational content. So these are the articles for the last couple of months. And then, think about how you can create something interesting. I think one of the things that we struggle with content is, if you do work in an industry like mine, it's all science-based. I'm not a scientist. I taught English and media studies, so I'm not going to be able to sit down there and tell you how to talk about data science. But what I can do is talk about the people in my company. So one of the things I started doing was just interviewing a member of staff and trying to do kind of one a month. And this is ongoing. And so I just asked them a few questions, why did you join SQ? How long have you been here? What was your journey to get here? And of course, this is all keywordable in the back. So at the back end, they've all got the right titles in order for people to find them on our site. And they all have this very similar format. And these are the ones I've done. So it's not fast, but it does give me some content every month. I know I've got an hour story coming out. A bit about when they joined, why they came into the industry, how their sort of educational journey. And then we always finish up with something about being away from work. What do you do when you're not at work? So that's something that all of us can do. We can work on this, and I tend to interview them, write it up, send it to them, they edit it and send it back, and it's done. It's probably a 2-week process at the most, but it's nice because then that if you line them up, you've got some content, guaranteed new content every month that you can keyword. So just a sort of top tip. And I think the other thing right now is educate. If you can educate people about topics within your business. I was listening to a B2B lawyer yesterday talking about how they were talking to putting out articles just around, what could be quite dry content, but kind of people saying, well, this is me trying to do this from home. So things like that. So there's lots of options there. Google Ads, they're not a money pit. And I have to say, our thanks to Ben on his last thing, because we'd actually stopped running our campaigns. And then he said, actually, this is a really good time to run them because nobody's running campaigns. So I thought, damn it, I made a mistake. So thinking about that share of voice again, how could you run a nice campaign alongside some other content? So maybe around your people, maybe it's a good time to focus on people. People need people right now. So have a think about that. And these are my kind of tips on what not to do, because this is what I've done and made a mess of it at times. So when you go into Google Ads, this is what you get. You get this kind of panel, and it says, what do you want to set up your campaign to do? And you can choose whatever. We've tended to focus on leads, traffic, and brand awareness. You might focus on something else. The next thing that comes up is this. Which campaign type do you want to do? Now, if you've been trained in Google Ads, sorry if I'm teaching you to suck eggs. I hadn't. I'd done a half-day Chartered Institute of Marketing course. And so I just thought, well, I'm just going to give it a go. I made the mistake of clicking on this smart ads because it says these are easy and we'll do all the work for you. Big mistake. And I'll explain why. The best one for us is to use this search one, which is how when people do the search, you see those little sort of ones that come up at the top of your search with an ad. And, that might be a good thing. Sometimes you just scroll past those because you don't want to click on them. But that's what it does. And then you can create a number of adverts. And I would recommend you create at least 3 or 4, or if you can manage it. And then you can go in and you can look at the metrics and you can cut off the ones that aren't working. So in fact, I started off with 4 adverts for this, and then I cut them off. Just went, right, those are the 2 that are working. I'll get rid of the others. So try it, and I can give you some tips around just about how to cap it, capping your spend. We're limited at £250 a month, which is a lot for me in my budgeting. And in total, after 6 months, we'd spent £900. So actually, we weren't spending as much as we'd budgeted for, which was good. Was it well spent? We had a good click-through rate. So actually, people who actually came into the site was about 5%, which is, from what I understand, is pretty okay, particularly in our industry. Might be different in yours. I think fast-moving consumer goods could be much higher, or actually it could be lower. And then the conversions were good. So when we got people onto the site, they then registered for our free community software, which was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And then display ads happened. So the smart campaigns work. They go along, they work out your keywords, and then all of a sudden, the display ads started happening. So I came into work one morning with people going, do you realise your ad is showing on the BBC? Because, well, of course, we're in Denmark, so we get the ads coming up on the BBC. And I went, what? Well, how's that happened? And because, of course, within our own company, we all search for community MDR and so on. The display ads popped up. And that could have put the spend up massively. And in fact, it was at that point I cut it off, that particular ad cycle. I just cut it off. So my one takeaway tip is do not use the smart ads unless you really can't be bothered to go and work on the keywords and do the ads. So, all right, so I'm getting towards the end now. So I'm sorry if I've raced through this, but it's quite a lot to get through. So good old Beetlejuice there. That's how I feel sometimes in lockdown. Useful tools, things that you could potentially use. If you haven't got a CRM, I don't have a CRM. I'm never going to get one because they're so expensive. You can use a free one. HubSpot's quite good. But I just found it frustrating. Every time I used a free one, they're designed to make you want to pay, and I can't afford them. So we have a thing called Monday.com, which is a sort of a group. It's a bit like a platform where you can share ideas and so on. And lots of companies have different ones. So I just built my own. And you can build this in Excel. Obviously, I've covered up all my secret contacts just in case there's any other pharma companies out there. And you can put the website in, you can put the location in, and then contact proposal, payment, all the things that you would normally get there. And this doesn't cost me anything. It's just built inside this little app that we use. Obviously, the company pay for this app, but they don't pay for it for marketing. So that's fine. It doesn't come out of my budget. non-existent budget. So, do whatever works for you. You can build it in Excel if you want. Wherever you're doing your tracking, just try things, see what works for you. I know Zoho do quite a nice CRM, free CRM, but again, they always have those limitations. Follower wonk. So if you do get into Twitter and you decide actually this is a really good thing, one of the things I've used, not actually at this company but at a previous company, was follower wonk, which is really good because it's a freemium site, but actually if you're very small, you're only ever going to have one profile to connect. You can look for users like you can search in software as a service companies and things like that, and it will help you analyze some of that data. So do recommend follower wonk. It's really good, and it can save you time. If you're trying to save time, trying to find the right companies to follow and so on, can be very, very useful. And one tool that I use, and it's the only really expensive thing that I think I have in my armory, is Lead Forensics. It's not free, and I would say don't do it now. This is something to think about when people are finally back in offices. But what Lead Forensics does is it gives you some interesting data on top of your website visits. So basically, it tells you what company has visited your website. So because of that, everybody has a unique IP. Obviously, GlaxoSmithKline in the US or in the UK has a unique IP address, and this just has a little bit of code that goes into your website, and it tells you which companies have been there. It tells you what pages they've been on. It doesn't give me any identifiable human data, so I have no idea who the person was. But what I can then do is go to LinkedIn and search for a name. So I might be looking for Global Data Standards Manager, and I'll go and look for that on LinkedIn. It's a very useful tool. Go and have a look at it, but beware, the moment you go on their website, they can find you. Maybe not at this time because you're at home, but once you're back in the office, this software works just as well on you. So that's how they found me, and then they got me. But it is very good. It's very helpful. Things to follow, particularly this is all focused on B2B, obviously. Marketing Week and their B2B podcasts, they're still free. I don't know when they're going to block them off. And I know Simon quite often shares content from Mark Ritson. He's fascinating. Love his language. He's straight to the point. B2B marketing, they are really good. They run some great free webinars. I was on one yesterday. It was fantastic, just talking about community engagement, how you engage people, how you maintain that engagement and convert it into something more meaningful. They're also running their conferences are full gone virtual. They're not cheap, but if you want some learning or you want some education, I think they're very good for that. Or some ideas. Search Engine Journal, there's some really good updates in there, just telling you about what's happening with the search engines or the latest trends. There's a lot of stuff on TikTok in there right now, because it's obviously people are using it a lot in lockdown. So well worth having a look at that. And then membership, I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Marketing. I'm trying to go for my chartered status. Why did I join? Because of all the free stuff. They do some great education. They do webinars a bit like this. They're free when you're a member. Highly recommend it. They also have a lot of good content hidden on their website. And I think sometimes, you need that. We all need that support, whether it's virtual or not. We're very lucky to have these, and especially now. And I think, if you're thinking about that, go and have a look. If you want to ask me what you get out of it, I can tell you. But I do find it very, very useful. It's just another community, depending on where you live and so on. And then the last thing, I promised Simon I'd just talk a little bit about working from home. I've worked from home for actually, other than when I've been in education and for Rescue, I worked at home most of my life. So it will work for you in two ways. You're either going to be a person who will do a routine every day, or you're going to be a person who goes, no, I can't have a routine. It's got to be different every day. So one of the things that's going to impact on that is partners, children, cats, dogs, and they can mess up your day, and that's fine. You just have to roll with that. But one of the things we try to do here is get your exercise in as if you were going to work. I would normally cycle to work, which takes me about half an hour. I do my working day and then I cycle home. But okay, I now want to get an hour's cycling in, and I'm going to go and do it, early. Get out the door, do it, and then it's done. And then I'm not thinking, oh, I really should be going out. I should be doing something, because the more the day drags on, you don't do it. So if you want to do your exercise routine, like as if you were traveling to work, go and do it. That was travel time you were doing anyway. So why not, go and do it as your exercise. If you don't like doing that, go straight out after work. And means you've got to say, well, work stops now, which is really important. Go out at lunch. My husband is a go out at lunch person, so he likes his morning to himself, and then he disappears off out to lunch. Get dressed. I know it sounds silly, and it's so easy to spend all day in your pajamas, but actually one of the things you should do is get up and get yourself dressed, because then your brain is going, right, I'm ready for work. If you stay in your pajamas all day, eventually you won't stop working at all. You'll just be like, So I would recommend getting dressed. I haven't always followed that rule, just so you know. Take regular breaks. One of the things we do when we're in an office is we get up and we walk around and we go and chat to people. When you're at home, you're not doing that so much, unless you've got a little one dragging you out. But, have a wander about, go and have a coffee, go and, if you've got a garden, you're lucky enough to have a garden, go for a walk. Vacuum, clean, do something creative. Just give your, one of the things we did when we first went into lockdown was build a massive puzzle. Just so we got up and we went and did something else, because we'd got out of working at home habits. Actually, we were too used to going into the office and doing it there. So we just started to get those little things that we do in order to keep ourselves sane going. Bake some buns, whatever it is that floats your boat. A really important thing, keep work separate. Stick to your office hours. Even if you've had a really unproductive day, it doesn't matter. Switch off your computer, put it off to one side, go and read a book, watch the TV, whatever it is. But you must separate your work life out, because otherwise it just all molds into one. And I think particularly if you're two adults at home and there's no kids around anymore and they've all gone off, it's so easy to just not stop. And you need to. You mainly to give your eyes a rest as well. Stay off the news. It's so hard for us as marketers. We're often on social media all day. I know I am. And, that Twitter feed sits there and I just shut it off. Okay, I'm only going to look at my competitor feeds. That's all I'm going to look at. On LinkedIn, I'm just going to, concentrate on what our company's doing. I'm not going to look at anything else today. So, switch it off. Calls, schedule them in. It's very easy at the moment for me. For instance, if I take my Monday this week, I didn't stop talking all day. It was exhausting. Just permanent calls, one after the other, the management team, the software team, the click team, the regs team. It just goes on and on and on. And actually you have to go, no, I'm not doing that. I'm limiting myself and I'm having the space. And what I do now in my Outlook calendar is I just put busy. I am busy from here to here. In other words, I'm not available. Leave me alone. So that's one of the things you can do. It's very easy to say yes. And actually you get so fed up with it. Constant calls, constantly being on the phone. And actually my mum then suffers, because I'm so tired of talking to people all day. I then don't phone her and she's back in the UK, which is bad. And my final thing is, don't eat at your desk. Get up and go and eat somewhere else, because that makes you take a proper lunch break as well. Don't eat at your desk. Don't eat your breakfast at your desk. Don't eat your supper at your desk. It's telling you to get away from your desk. And finally, just let your hair grow. Mine's a mess because I haven't been to the hairdressers for 4 months. So yeah. So thank you very much for listening. I hope some of that's been useful. I'm sorry I've rattled through it, and I'm sorry you couldn't hear me for some of it. I don't quite know what happened. And those are my contact details. So yeah, thank you very much.
Great, thanks AJ. That's some really interesting presentations. Definitely some really handy stuff there. I liked the working from home tips at the end, because I don't know about anyone else on the webinar, but this is my first experience of working from home, and to get tips like that is really useful. Definitely getting up and moving around, like in the office, I do it all the time. I run down to the factory to see something, or you go make a cup of tea or whatever. I mean, here I have to be a little bit careful because we've got a daughter who's nearly 2, and she's very keen on daddy being home.
Yeah.
So I have to plan it and time it and be a bit sneaky, but yeah, it is good.
I'll just stick that up so people can see it. Yeah, and I think, these are weird times, and it might be that you never work at home ever again. But while you are, you have to stay sane, and you have to work around. You have to work with what you can. Now, I know when my son was young, and he was about sort of 3 or 4. What I would do is I would get up early, and then I'd work until he woke up, and then we'd do a bit of whatever you have to do, and of course. And then he would have a snooze or whatever, and then I'd do a bit more work, and then he would wake up, and then we'd play, and then I'd try and exhaust him, and then I would work late. And in fact, when I used to work, it was good training because when I used to work with the US as well. So I used to work from home. I was working for a global non-profit company, and one of the things I used to do then was I would get up early, do all my email, shut it off, deal with him for a few hours, or take him to school, and then do my shopping, come back in. The US all came online at lunch. I'd work really hard until about 6 o'clock, stop, do all the stuff you need to do with the kids, and then I'd work again between about, sort of 7 and about 10, because then they were finishing around about 5. This was mainly East Coast. So you just have to do what works. But I think people get stuck at their desks and you don't move, and that's not great either. We get stuck on these long calls, and that's not helpful either.
Sounds good. And we had some really, really good tips from you as well, for how to work on a pretty much non-existent budget and with hardly any other team members, or even on your own. And
Yeah.
I know that's the case for a lot of marketers. So I'm just going to have a quick look now at the Q&A. If you do have any questions, pop them on the chat or in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to answer. So if you can see, AJ, the questions, we've got one from Ben. The first one is, how do you find Instagram for B2B?
It's from what I haven't actually utilized our own Instagram account, but it's been very, very interesting talking to other marketers, because we talked about it. Actually, we talked about it. We moved to our beautiful new office, and we talked about actually it's a time for us to start using Instagram and to be showcasing our staff. From a B2B perspective, it's a fantastic recruitment tool. So if you're recruiting, it's really good, because that's, a lot of your kind of, if you're looking for your kind of graduate community, they're all over Instagram. It's also used a lot in pharmaceuticals to get information out to patients, because the patients are, they're on it. From our perspective, I'd really like to showcase the brand. That's what I want to do. And I had planned, I'd actually been given budget to get a professional photographer in and to do some really nice pictures in our new office, and we were going to have a bit of a launch party. It's just never happened, thanks to lockdown. I'll let you know, Ben, when I finally get around to doing something with it. But we would have used it for events stuff as well, showcasing our presenters at events. I mean, yeah, it's kind of thrown my idea about what I was going to do with Instagram on its head. But looking at my competitors, that's roughly what they're doing, and I think they do find it useful for conveying company culture. So I don't know whether it would lead to good leads or a sale, but it might lead to good recruits, let's say.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what business you're in as well.
Yes.
We don't use Instagram anywhere near enough, but that's more because of the time factor. So
Yes.
when I managed to get my free intern that you talked about, then maybe Instagram will be a bit more for us. But it would, in theory, it should be a really great visual showcase of what we do, because some of the stuff we do is really, really cool and it looks cool. We've got another question here from Megan Armstrong. Unable to do events, which is a usual way to get leads. To start up, top of funnel is important for us. Already do PPC, SEO, and social media. Are there any other tactics which you may recommend? I'll let you start.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we've been exploring, and which it's really, really important, I think, is to get buy-in from whoever you would normally be using at your events. But one of the things we always do when we go to events is we normally have 4 or 5 presentations. So if we do a big event called Fuse, and we normally have 4 or 5 presenters in there. We take a stand. We might have 8 of us at the event. I mean, it's a big thing. The European one may well happen in November, but I don't think that our company will let us travel. So one of the things I thought about was actually, okay, we create fantastic content for these events, and we go out and we do them. So how about we do them ourselves? We'll do some webinars. We'll do a proper webinar system. And yeah, I don't have a lot of budget, but I can tag it on to. We use Zoom for all our meetings, and actually I can tag on the kind of Zoom webinar system, which is exactly the same as their meeting system, for not a lot more. So we're going to use Zoom for that. Simon is using this big marker, which, find a webinar system that works for you, and actually encourage people to present that educational content. people want to know stuff right now, and actually people are quite happy to come and listen to a webinar, and they like the Q&A, the fact that you can type things in, and you can get some extra help. So, and I think that will be where we're hoping to bring our leads in right now. That's where they are now. The other thing we have is we have a free part of our software on our site that people can go and use. So a bit like all these freemium sites, you can go in and you can use the free bit, and then if you want anything else, you've got to buy the bit on top. So I'm promoting that quite heavily. So if you've got an offering around some free content, or maybe some white papers or things like that you can get people to come in, and they have to kind of provide their details in order to get it. For our software, it's very specific. You can't log in unless it's a company email domain on the address, on the email address. So we've restricted things, so that there's things you can do like that. But I think for us it's going to be the webinar. We're going to try and replace that content webinar. And the thing, if you wouldn't normally be presenting, I would say do some panels. You've probably got some really good people in your company who are really experienced at what they do, and who can talk about how you can help people with their pain problems right now, or maybe it'll be around this is how we're coping with what we're doing at home. But you can record those on Zoom and put them up on your website, and that kind of stuff. So I think that would be probably where I would be thinking about heading. I hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah, I fully agree. On the webinar front, I mean, that's why we're doing them now, because it's really hard to replace that face-to-face element that you get at events. So webinars is one really good way. Another thing to have a look at is if there's any industry magazines that are still going out, because A, people have loads more time to read them at the moment, and B, it could be an opportunity to get a pretty decent price for an advert or an insert in a magazine. So have a look at that. That could be another useful source of leads. If you're in a particular, quite a niche industry, then there are usually a few magazines around which cater for your client base and which actually get read. So that could be another way. It's going to cost you a bit of money, but it could be a really, really good way of getting some decent leads into the top of your funnel. Yeah,
and I think that's the thing. At the moment, it's about nurturing and engaging. So maybe the other thing to think about is to look at your, where people are in your funnel. If they're still at the top, then how could you engage them with some nice, interesting content that you could send them? And if you can't afford to put stuff into magazines and so on, then maybe you can get some people to link to some content on your website. So that's why LinkedIn is so good. But if you've got maybe a client or a customer you haven't spoken to for a while, but they're still using you, and you say, actually, do you know what? Could you send me a recommendation that I could use on our site, or could you link back to our site as well, so that you're kind of keeping that engagement with your brand going. And then maybe have a look at some of your leads in the top of that funnel, and say, okay, we're going to send them some new content that we've put together, or maybe an update on our team, or people are engaging and they are reading at home. We are going to get to the point where people are fatigued and they give up, by the way. But right now, you just want to keep it going. You want to keep that those relationships being nurtured just gently, because come 6 months' time, they're going to be back out buying. And if they haven't heard from you because you didn't go back to them when times were a bit tough, I think that's where people will lose business. So think about that.
Great. Well, I think that's all of our questions that we've got in. So kind of time for wrap up. Thank you, AJ. That was really, really useful and interesting. We've got some more webinars. I know I've only done 3 over the past month, but I'm aiming to do 1 a week. So watch out for next week's webinar, content TBC. I will, over the next couple of weeks, be doing a webinar myself as well on how to sort of build marketing plan for the bounce back. So what happens now that lockdown is in some countries, and certainly in the UK, we're starting to talk about what life's going to look like as we ease lockdown. So looking at some strategies and tactics for that. Just notice there's another question on the chat. Ben. do you find Yoast Premium worth the extra? Well, I don't
Yes.
use Premium because we have a who does it for us. So I'll look to you, AJ.
Yes, I really do. I'm glad that it's a very small part of my teeny tiny budget, but yes, I do find it really helpful. It saves time. It saves time, and it helps get it right. So yeah.
Great. Okay, well, we are 59 minutes, so that's pretty good timing, I'd have said. I think that is the end of what we've got to say, the end of the questions. So thanks for joining. Stay safe. It's nearly the weekend, although weekends at the moment are a bit weird, aren't they? Because we're still at home. So they're not quite like weekends, but you can still have a nice time. Hopefully the weather's good wherever you are, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for coming.